welcome to Panasonic Presents here at NAB 2019. And next up on the schedule, he's back. We have the esteemed ASC DP William Wages. And yesterday we spoke a little bit about VariCam and dual ISO. Today we're going to talk about cost cutting. So also on the panel is, what did you want me to call you? The magnificent Barry Russo?
Barry Russo, magnificent.
So Barry works in cinema development. He's a 28-year ICG member, and he's also a recent ASC associate member. So Barry's going to kind of lead the panel here. So go to your slide. So Bill, we're going to talk a little bit about all your projects, but in particular, we're going to talk about Sun Records today and talk a little bit about, you know, the production and how you saved costs by going with the VariCam LT. So let's play the Sun Records clip.
Yeah, let me get out of the way here.
This season on Sun Records.
I dream of making music like that someday. Leonard Chess?
Yeah, I'm Leonard Chess. Who are you?
Well, it doesn't matter who I am. Matters what I got.
You Elmo Lewis's boy?
Jerry Lee Lewis.
Hello, I'm J.R. Cash.
Carl Perkins. This here's my brothers JB and Clay. We play the same kind of jumped up hillbilly deal as the Preston boys.
Well, I'm Mike Turner. This here's the King's River. Hottest thing in the Delta.
We got laws here, boy.
Guitar player. Whoa. B.B. King. Maybe you could record him, huh?
I appreciate it.
Thanks, those men. Colonel Tom Pop. Well, you have quite the effect on the little ladies.
Think about what it'd look like with your first hit on it.
If we don't hear Eddie all across the dial, we'll go back to the old deal. But if Eddie is all over the radio, you match Columbia's office.
Party time, boys.
I got me a girl waiting back home.
Screwing your second job. Boss, part of helping me.
Fooling with my sister?
What's your name?
I realize the debt is now $1,200, and you will have another $50 tomorrow, as promised.
Who you running from? What kind of trouble you in?
Don't bullshit me. Get your asses in here.
I have a current contract with Elvis that has a long time to run.
18 months, 2 weeks.
So glad you could make it.
You'll see plenty of Elvis signs with me, I guarantee you.
Let's lay one down for real.
All right. So Bill, why don't you give us some background on Sun Records and how you got involved?
Okay. By the way, thanks for coming, guys. Sun Records was a limited series that we hoped was going to go further. The producer bought the rights to $1 Million Quartet, the Broadway play, and that's what this was kind of based on. History of rock and roll, we shot it, the beginning of rock and roll, and we shot it in Memphis in actual locations because we wanted the authenticity of that. That's where the VariCam really came in to help us. Some of the actual locations where the events happened. By the way, this was cut while we were still shooting, and it's basically dailies. It hasn't been color corrected. So there's things that I would do to change it a bit here and there. But this was put together while we were shooting as a sizzle reel to get people interested in it. How the camera helped is in locations. Having 5,000 is a game changer. There's no quality difference between the 800 and the 5,000. So instead of going in with gigantic lights, I'm going in with little 100-watt lights. As a matter of fact, the second shot in that with the kid dancing, Elvis dancing in the girl's bedroom, that's a 25-watt light in that bulb in that lamp. I mean, it's nothing. You can shoot a brilliantly lit, brightly lit scene with light you can't read a newspaper in. As a matter of fact, the actors, we did a couple of scenes, and the actors kind of sneaked behind me to look at the monitor to make sure I knew what I was doing, you know. And you don't do that because you have to, but it comes in handy when you need to. The other thing about I should tell you, this is the first show ever shot with an LT. And we started the show with the demo models, and
Engineer
as
samples.
yeah, and they came directly from the factory to us. And when we opened up the box, you could smell the new paint. It was like a new car. I would not have done that with any other company, but I know Panasonic is very conservative, and they don't release things until it's 100% in every way. So we literally took the cameras out of the cases, took them out of the plastic bags, put them on the heads, and turned them on, put the LUT in, and started shooting with them without a hiccup at all. So that's when they tell you the camera's 5,000, it is 5,000. That's my point of this. When they tell you it's 14 stops of latitude, I think it's more. I think it's 15 and a half. It all depends on how you test it. So these things I used every single day on this show. Like a lot of productions, especially on location, we have weather issues. It changes the schedule. A scheduled location, the people drop out. Like that room with Elvis dancing, that was an attic room next door. We weren't going to shoot there. We found out that morning that the house we were going to shoot in, the person was sick, really sick, so we couldn't shoot in their house. So we went into a place we'd never seen before, dressed it real quick, and shot. In that room, I could spread my arms out and hit both sides of it. So having a smaller camera really makes a difference. And having that dynamic range, which nobody really talks about that so much about this camera. They talk more about the dual ISO, but the dynamic range is just as important.
So just so everyone understands, all the interiors were done at 5,000 ISO, and then outside he did 800s, like changing film stocks. You know, we got plenty of light outside, let's go to 800. We're inside, let's go to the 5,000 stock.
Yeah, if you're not outdoors in the daylight, I'm in 5,000. So that doesn't mean I'm shooting at f11 or anything, because I use the ND wheel to keep it at a 2.9. I pretty much shoot at a 2.9. I use the Fujinon 19-90 and shoot wide open with it all the time. Never zoom with it. It's a variable prime. And but the B camera might be on a 150, so I can spin the wheel and give them a 5.6 instead of a 2.9, which is really, really handy. I hate having to pick which eye is in focus on a close-up. It takes you out of the movie, I feel. So these are the hidden benefits of this camera. The other thing about the wide shot and the close-up, if I shot the close-up at a 2.9 the way I was on the wide shot, the circles of confusion are completely different. The out of focus is completely different. So with a 5.6, not only do I get both eyes in focus, but the part of the shot that's out of focus looks the same as the wide shot. And that's a phenomenon I'd never thought about until we started shooting with the camera. I started with a VariCam 2 shows before this one and became a convert. And when Barry brought the prototype of the LT to show me, it was like, yeah, I need this thing. And convinced the producers, and they were willing to take a chance being the first to ever use it.
And then you're talking about the producers, they were hooked on the camera afterwards.
Oh yeah, the producer
the
absolutely
cost savings
hooked.
with the smaller lightings, working faster, getting more setups.
Yeah, here's what happened for me with the VariCam. It changed everything that I do. It changed my entire approach to cinematography. Used to have a 40-foot truck full of lighting equipment. Now it fits in the truck smaller than a 5-ton, a 3-ton really, and it's everything that I need. I didn't cut this back because I didn't cut it because I needed to or budget reasons. All I did because I wanted to. The smaller footprint I have, the quicker we move. The smaller the crew, and that's by choice. It has nothing to do with economics. This is a pretty big budget show, and I've done gigantic budget shows with this, and I do it the same way. It's about getting rid of the process, getting rid of all the technology, and get to making the movie. It gives the actors more time. It gives the director more time. It gives me more time to make things right and to really tell the story, because ultimately that's what it's all about. It's not about technology. The grip package is just as small too. What that does cost-wise is, with the 40-foot trailers full of stuff, they park in base camp. You have to load a stake bed and then take it to the set, so you have to remember everything you need. That's really hard to do. I don't want to think about it. With these little trucks, they park at the set, and everything's there, everything I need. So I don't have to worry about it the night before, making a list of what I need and all. That saves time. That saves an hour and a half of overtime for the crew. So these things add up. Being able, because of this camera, to shoot with a zoom instead of primes, because I don't need the f2 or the 1.4. Roland Joffe, the director, calculated that we save an hour and a half a day to not changing lenses, because every time you change a lens, other things happen. Makeup goes in, I'll go in, sound will adjust, everybody adjusts stuff, so a 3-minute operation takes 10 minutes. Well, you add that up in a 12-hour day, and it's an hour and a half. And he was thrilled, and the actors were thrilled, because instead of having to change lenses for a close-up, we wouldn't even cut. We would zoom in and keep them in the moment and keep it going. There were times in dramatic scenes where we would not tell them we're going to go to a tighter shot, and the operator would reach down and change it in the middle of the take. So on a certain line cue and everything. So these are things that aren't possible with other cameras.
Right, and you talk about the zooming in. You're not zooming. It's a variable prime. I just want to emphasis on that. He's using the Cameo as variable prime lens. I want to punch it instead of having it change to 100 millimeter. All right, we're 100. Let's go. It's that quick.
Yeah, and it gets rid of walking around with a $30,000 lens on an eyepiece to figure out where to put the dolly track. It doesn't have to be that precise.
And you didn't need dolly tracks because you had an amazing
yeah.
Steadicam operator.
Most of this show was shot with a Steadicam. I had a Steadicam guy that's a genius. And I took him on the next production I did with Roland to South Africa to do a movie. He was the only other American on the show. And because this camera's so small and that lens is so small, he would ride that thing all day long instead of a dolly. And
no tracks to level,
no
getting
nothing,
in the way
no
of the
dance
shot,
floor, none of that.
not seeing
stuff.
the tracks in the shot.
And I'd never worked with a guy this good. He was on this, and by lunch the first day I went to Roland and said, I don't think we need the dolly. And he said, yeah, I don't think we do either. So at the end of the first day I talked to the Steadicam operator and said, how do you feel about doing the whole show? And he said, that's what I'm here for.
Wow.
And because of the weight and all of that, he could wear this thing all day long.
Did you use the dolly to tie off the
the only time I use the dolly on both of those shows is to keep a 12-by from blowing over. We use it as a dead weight. Now, this guy's world-class, so there are not many operators that can do that. We did Steadicam type shots, but most of them were standard, over-the-shoulder, dolly shots and all, but you can't tell it's on a Steadicam. The other thing about this camera is the color and the dynamic range and how they combine. When you go into these locations, I'm not having to lift the levels so much inside with a lot of heavy, big lighting equipment to see detail outside. Now, sometimes I don't want to see that detail, especially on a period thing like this. You're always hiding stuff. But I had control of that. I could just dial it in or dial it out. I also treated the camera like a film stock. We created a LUT, a very simple LUT, that basically we started with Rec 709 and opened up the shadows to the point that it went too far, then backed off a little bit, brought down the highlights until we went too far and backed off a little bit. So I got all the latitude the camera had, and that's what I shot to. I controlled color temperature by dialing in 32K, 56K, or whatever, and kept it all. And you can see that's uncolor corrected, so that's out of the camera. Use the monitor as a light meter. I light to the monitor. I'd never use a light meter. Believe me, I have a lot of light meters at home. I started in film, and the first movie I shot in 35 was ASA 100 film. So to go from that to shooting at 5,000, on a Scout in the old days, I would go with light meters and color meters and all of these things and have to go check it in detail. Now, even if I haven't seen the location, what happens sometimes in an emergency, they'll say, do you think you can shoot there? And I'll say, could you see? And they go, yeah. And I say, yeah, we can shoot there, because I can shoot in light you can't see. Thus the don't be afraid of the dark. And if you use this camera to its fullest capability, you'll go to those extremes. You don't have to. Again, you can shoot with it as if it were an ASA 100 or ISO 100 film stock. If you shoot a Rec 709, you're shutting down half of what the camera can do. It'll work fine, and you can work to that. But why would you when you have all these other capabilities? Yeah.
So Bill, I want to ask you a couple of questions on Sun Records. So it's a period piece, and from what you told me, it was kind of a low budget, series. So how did you recreate like that sort of 50s look, on your budget?
A lot of that's done with the lighting and the way we shot it and filtration. I use a little bit of filtration, the glimmer glass, just to knock the edge off the lenses. All modern lenses are so sharp, it's deadly. And as a matter of fact, the sensors are sharp, The evolution of the technology today is the sensors are getting sharper and sharper and sharper. The lenses are getting sharper and sharper and sharper, and actors hate it because it's showing every flaw, every pore. So
you need 4K skin.
Yeah. So I use the glimmer glass just to knock that edge off. So that's part of it, but that's not a big part of it. Sometimes the guys will screw up, and one camera will have the wrong filter in it and everything. But in color timing, I can play with it. And like there were a couple of shots the smoke didn't match, and that's stuff that I would have crushed out it did crush out in the final color timing.
But weren't they really smoking on that? You said they were smoking.
Oh yeah,
cigars
in that
all the
office with the record producer and all. Yeah, they were smoking big cigars, and I tell you what, we were all sick. They were sick. Everybody was sick.
But it looked good. You got the shot.
Yeah. You couldn't see. I mean, because you saw 2 clips of a 10-minute scene. Yeah, I tell you, this camera, like when we got to the auditoriums, these auditoriums or stages were at lodges. They were at Shriner's Lodge. They weren't real theater. With that opening shot, when the curtain goes up, there's no theater out there. There's nothing, because the stage is for Shriners, and they don't do a stage production, but the backstage looks just like it, so there's no auditorium. It's a little bitty room. And so we had to fake a lot of things like that.
It looked great. You couldn't tell.
Smoke hides a lot of things.
That's it. Oh, you had that Leco light that was like.
Yeah, we didn't have follow spots. So that's all done with Lecos.
Yeah.
That's another thing this camera allows.
So your light package was minimal, And
the light package fit in a Shorty 40, which is a stake bed with a box on it.
And you also have your collection of your own homemade LED lights that you use for
hair. Yeah, I have little battery-operated LED lights that I take
you
everywhere
pop it
I
up
go.
on the magnet, and we're good to go. Instead of wiring things and hiding the wires, it just pops it up and good to go.
They all work on 9-volt batteries and all. So, yeah, I can key a scene with a flashlight easily. I mean, a flashlight that is on your keychain, and I've actually done that. Again, not because I chose to do it that way. You have complete choice of everything you do because you're not limited by the technology of the camera. And that's a significant change for me. I shot a certain way before I used this camera, and I shoot an entirely different way now. The show that I'm going on, Yellowstone, the producer that did Sun Records has brought me into this thing because of all of this. I had to convince them the first time, but by halfway through the first week and they saw the results, there was no more convincing. And with the money that we saved, we could put to other uses. I try to earmark some of it for me so I can get condors and all. I mean, in the old days, we lit a drive-in movie theater on this one that we still needed the condor, 80-foot condor. Normally in the old days, you put an 18,000 watt 18K on it. I did it with an 800 watt Joe Leco with a 90-degree lens in it, so there's hardly any light coming out. And instead of, I was prepared to light the screen so that they could burn in an image on it. We turned the projector on to check it out, and it was too bright. So we put an ND filter on the projector and used that instead of us putting lights, 200 yards away. The Condor was that far away, but instead of like the old days of running all this 4-aught cable out there and the big generator, you drop what is essentially an extension cord and plug it into a putt-putt. The savings on that is phenomenal. But you have to be open to it to do it. You can't go your old way.
Don't be afraid of it. And I've heard a lot of cinematographers say the stress level drops for them because they get into environments that sometimes you don't know about, or you don't realize, oh my goodness. It's like, bring it on. I'll shoot anywhere. I have no problem. I know the capabilities of this camera. And for that reason, a lot of the cinematographers, they keep on using VariCam over and over again because they get really comfortable. It becomes their favorite paintbrush, if you will, and not being afraid to go into these different environments. I just want to add another thing about you've had 0 breakdowns of these cameras.
I've never had a problem.
And my little branding message, I've been Panasonic 11 years. The reliability of our products is really, really high. We have a very, very low percentage rate. If it breaks, it's usually your fault. I'm just saying. We also have to turn things around very quickly. So I just want to point out about the reliability. You were all over Cape Town, South Africa. You were in the heat in the summer in Tennessee. You were in Atlanta. In
well, it's hot in South Africa too.
It was funny. You're shooting the first show, Containment, and you kept on fogging up the viewfinder.
Yeah.
He goes, I have a hot head. It's August, but I have a hot head. I always hot.
Right.
So I got you a
So you
bottle
got
of spit from Amazon and put it on, which helped for a while. But
Got a heater for the eyepiece.
we actually got a heater from the eyepiece from Dens. They actually made a heater for it. So anyway, I just wanted to bring up the reliability.
Here's the thing, to give you a good example. In South Africa, there were none of these cameras. So I called Barry, he called Germany, and Nella Pertl,
Yeah,
is that how you
yeah.
pronounce it? They arranged for us to get cameras down to South Africa. These guys had never seen the camera. They'd never dealt with it, and they were panicked about that, very worried about it, because they got hung up in customs in South Africa. We didn't get the camera till 9 o'clock in the morning on Friday, the last day of prep.
They were sitting around all week, these guys.
Yeah, waiting for
cameras.
it, waiting. And so they arranged for Panavision to stay open over the weekend so they could learn the camera. They called me at 9 o'clock in the morning, said, we've got the cameras. I had a production meeting to go to, and I raced there at noon. And I got there, this is South Africa, they're sitting in the break room smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee and telling stories. And I go, what happened? What happened? They're on the truck, we're ready to go. They learned a thing in an hour. It's that simple. Even I understand the menus, and I don't know anything.
Yeah, so I sent them a PowerPoint. I do a lot of workshops, so I sent them my VariCam 101 workshop PowerPoint for them to get it while they're hanging all these days waiting. So they went through my presentation. They were able to quickly just pick up the camera. It's built for children. You can look at it and know what to do. You don't have to read a manual. You just dig into it, and it's very intuitive.
It's very intuitive, completely intuitive. The other thing, too, is a post-production house there that did the post and everything. They were nervous about it. They'd never seen the camera. And once they brought everything out to location the first day, because that's how nervous they were. And they had arranged to have Alexa standing by. And once they saw the footage, it's like, oh, wow, I get it. You know, they were completely convinced. Nobody believed the 5,000. And nobody does. As a matter of fact, to show you how invisible that is, every show I've started with this, the B camera is usually the problem because the whole B camera staff doesn't get all the prep time. And I'll notice, you know, about the third take on the first scene that the f-stops are a little different because I'm not looking at them. I'm dialing it, looking at the screen. And I'll radio, guys, check your ISO. There's a long silence, and I get this panic call on the radio. Oh, my God, we're in 5,000. And I go, all right, don't put it on the camera report. Don't tell anybody. Put the camera in 800 and just forget it. And no one's ever noticed.
Yeah, so the dynamic
no one in
range
post ever noticed. It's the same.
Doesn't change.
When Barry said it was 2 film stocks, it is only an ISO. It's the same film stock in every other way.
Yeah, the V-Gamut, the V-Log, that's all the same. You still get the 13 plus stops. It doesn't. None of that changes.
Yeah, and you can intercut them without question. And the little Eva, it doesn't have 5,000. It has 2,500. It's the same thing. It's a little mini LT. Yeah. I like the LT. I've shot with both the 35 and the LT, and I like the LT again because of the size. It's smaller, and it does everything I need. The Pure, if I were going to do a big visual effects movie, I'd probably use the Pure. But other than that, I see no need for it.
So the Pure is the uncompressed, raw only codex back on the VariCam 35. Still pretty proficient size as well. It's pretty nimble.
Oh yeah, it's not big.
It's on the dolly over there if anyone wants it.
Yeah, go check them out. But take a look at the Eva. It looks like a little toy or a handy cam. It's not. It's a real movie camera. As a matter of fact, my son used mine to shoot a movie with it. And again, people didn't know it. The colorist came to the set, you know, concerned. And once they looked at it, it's like, oh yeah, this is great. No problem. It's a real camera. I could have shot this show with the Eva with no problem.
Does anyone have any questions for Bill or Barry?
Yeah.
So I had a couple questions. I just wanted to be clear. So the base is 800 and 5,000
yes.
on the
two.
Right.
Okay.
You're not going into gain to get the 5,000.
Right. No. Okay.
Although you can go into gain to get 5,000, and that's a
You don't want
mistake
to.
people have
Yeah,
made
you don't do
testing
that.
the camera.
So my question, William, is if you're at 5,000, and I know from seeing another seminar with you guys, you can go down. You can use that 5,000 as a base rate and go down, like say, to 3,000. Talk about
Yes.
why you didn't do that. Why you stayed at 5,000. Is there any benefit? You know, do you get a little less noise? Talk about why you, as the DB, decided I'm going to stay at 5,000.
Well, there's a phenomenon that has nothing to do with video noise, that I didn't know about this until the camera came out. It's called shot noise, SHOTT, and it's because light has noise in it, and you're using so little light that another way to think about it, which probably isn't scientifically accurate, is think of it as every pixel doesn't fill up with the same number of photons. So you get some noise from that.
It's random noise. It goes
Yeah, it's
in
random.
waves.
It's easy to get rid of. Just overexpose a tiny bit, do what you're saying, go down to 3,000. And I did that for a while, but then I started looking at the noise, and it looks like film grain because it's not structured. It's random, completely random. And I really like the look of it. It gives it a more organic feel. And
Nice
all.
texture to it.
So staying in that higher gave you that, but I'm saying if you were to drop it down, would it have less of that?
Yes.
Grain?
Yeah, it would go away.
Okay, so you liked it aesthetically, and then also obviously lighting-wise was a quicker. Okay.
So just so shot noise. If you go from 5,000 base, we go down to 2,500. That's minus 6 dB. We reduce it by 50%. It's all symmetrical. It's all math. So we go down. We reduce.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
So if I reduce from 5,000 base, I go down minus 6 dB to 2,500. Right. I went down one stop. I reduced my shot noise by one stop. It's reduced, so it gets cleaner. Crazy Rich Asian is playing over there. He shot, Vanya Chanul shot at 2,000 ISO. He wanted a very clean, super sharp, polished look. So it's all aesthetics. It's all your look. The Deuce was shot at 3,200. They wanted some shot noise because it was 70s. They wanted to feel that texture. Bill loves the texture of 5,000. You may not. So you have the ability to do that. Even at 2,500, it's still really low light sensitive. It's a game changer, and that's native. Now you're in negative gain, so you don't have to worry about digital noise, which we don't like, you know.
I tell you, there's less noise, shot noise in the 5,000 than there is in noise at 1280 on other cameras.
Yeah.
If you're going to gain at 1280. The other thing is, nowadays, the studios and networks don't mind grain reduction. In the past, they did. So if you use a 5,000, one click of grain reduction and it goes away.
Yeah.
So it can be pure. I mean, my feeling is I would rather have another quarter stop than to, I told these people not to call me here.
Yeah. Hey, so a lot of films today, a lot of projects, they add texture. They add a grain to films. So,
yeah, that happens a lot.
And that's the beauty of that folks love about VariCam is it has a nice organic texture to it. It's really easy to grade and have a consistent.
I'll tell you, every colorist I've worked with on this say it's the cleanest image they've ever seen.
Yeah.
And they can really wring it out. And that's the thing, if you test this camera, you have to take it to color timing. If you do it in a rental house and just look at over and under and all, you can't really tell what's there. You need to go in and break the image. And the way I do that is, well, there's a complicated way, I'll just simplify it. Take a Macbeth chart and shoot it at the correct exposure, and then in one-stop increments, go to 8 under, and then go to 8 over. Set your color correction at the correct exposure and watch it, and see where it disappears. See where it goes black, where it turns white. Then color correct again, and go to each exposure and see what you can pull out of it. And what you'll find with this camera is that 3 stops over, you can pull it back, and it doesn't look affected at all. And at 8 stops over, it looks terrible. At 8 stops under, it's going to be so muddy you can't do anything. So the trick is why I say it has 15 and a half stops of latitude. It's where you expose it. And if you overexpose it a bit, you're going to bring more detail in the highlights. So you can stretch that a bit, which I don't think the scopes really show you that. It's cheating a little bit. But I use that all the time. Again, I use the monitor. I look at the monitor. What you see is what you get.
And then just two last questions. Talk about, you said that you shot 2 other shows prior to this with VariCam. I was confused. This was the LT the first time? So what other shows you shot on VariCam?
VariCam the first time. This was the second show.
VariCam 35 on containment.
Yeah.
Was the first one. Okay. And then,
this was the second one.
And then it was Sun Records, and then you went to...
this is the LT, and then South Africa, I used the LT.
Right.
And then the last question, can you just talk about the glasses? You mentioned the 19 to 90. Was that the only lens? And did you also fly that on Steadicam?
Yep.
Yes.
That is, every camera body had a 19 to 90 and an 85 to 300. And that's it. We had a 16 millimeter prime. In South Africa, I had a set of primes because we only had one 19 to 90. And I was worried if somebody dropped it we'd be out of business until we could fly another one into the country. So I had a prime. We didn't need them. We didn't use them. I usually take a 16 prime just in case 19 isn't wide enough. You know, and but what I found in my testing, again, going through color timing, I did blind testing of all modern lenses. Took a couple of days. We shot the S4s, the Master Primes, the Ultra, everything that we could get our hands on. We did it at ARRI. And we blind tested, meaning that the lens isn't labeled as to what it is. It's labeled B or C or D or whatever. And when you look at it after color correction, from a 2.8 on closed down, you can't tell the difference. All modern lenses are the same. They're all CAD designed. They're all, you know, pretty much they're all the same. So what that meant to me is I put that 19 to 90 on 8 camera, and we're done. I've got every focal length between 19 and 90. Again, I never zoom it for a shot. We'll zoom to change sizes. In the 85 to 300, the same thing. We use both of those lenses on the Steadicam. They are very similar in weight, and the center of gravity is very similar. So to switch from one to the other took minutes.
Yeah, it's a 6-pound lens basically. It's very manageable.
Yeah, and it marries to this camera beautifully. Yeah. What I always would in film, I always tried to shoot around a 2.8 because you got. I mean, I know this whole fad now about how the out of focus looks. I really don't care about that because the audience doesn't care about that. I care about the people. I've spent my whole career trying to get stuff in focus, and I don't care that much about the out of focus. Now, I have shot at a 1.3, and I've done all of that. I did in South Africa, we did a scene with a guy who was lit by a lighter in the prison, and it was shot at about an f4. So having that capability, and you can still see detail in the flame. So that's a dynamic range. Yeah. So when you test this camera, open your mind, forget everything you know, and look at what you have, and look at the monitor, and go to color timing and ring it out. The color timing places, they'll let you come in to experiment. You know, you can twist some arms. They'll usually let you in.
All right.
Anybody have a question?
That's it?
Oh,
We're wrapping up?
Yeah, Bill, if you have any other questions, Bill will be hanging out at the booth for a little bit longer. So I wanted to thank Bill Wages for
thank you.
being here for both
Thank
days.
you guys for
Barry.
coming.
And as Bill said, please check out the VariCams and the EVA 1 on the other side of the booth, and visit Barry in the darkroom as well.
Well, and look at the Lumix too. I'm not supposed to say that, but look at I don't work for Panasonic, so I can say whatever I want. The Lumix intercuts beautifully with these cameras.
Right, but it's limited to 12 stops. He has an EVA now. He's used a lot of Lumix, and the EVA is the next step up. So we have the whole family of products from, you know, the lower cost, the middle, the EVA, and then the higher end VariCams, which are also affordable.
Yeah.
And wait, we got 0% financing, so order now.
Thank you.
Thank you.